Today, we're going to talk about differential pricing in the context of railroads. You will learn how market forces drive differential pricing and how critical it is to the industry's economic health. We'll also talk about some of the misinformation surrounding it, particularly with respect to a segment of rail customers that's served by only one railroad. First, though, let's talk about what differential pricing is. Differential pricing is based on the economic principle that some customers are not willing to pay as much as others for the same service. Railroad customers who have other choices for their freight transportation needs, whether other railroads or other transportation modes like trucks or barges, are generally not willing to pay more than what those alternative options would cost. That common sense reality effectively caps what the railroads can charge those customers if they want to keep them. And, as you'll learn, losing that competitive business would mean the rates charged the remaining customers, those with fewer or no competitive options, would have to go up in order to cover the extraordinary fixed costs of running a railroad. Differential pricing balances the system so that while customers with fewer or less desirable options may pay more than customers with more options, they still pay less than they would have to if there were no other customers.
Allowing railroad pricing to reflect differing market realities, as is the case with other businesses, was a hallmark of the Staggers Rail Act, a law that partially deregulated the U.S. freight railroad industry in 1980. Prior to the Staggers Act, railroads would publicly post a price for commodities, and everyone moving the same commodity would be charged the same price. Under that system, railroads routinely lost customers, because they were unable to lower rates when competing for business against trucks or other railroads. Staggers changed all that. By allowing railroads to enter into confidential contracts and charge differently situated shippers different prices, railroads could compete more effectively, retain customers, and earn adequate revenue to run the business. Of course, not all customers end up with the same prices. Some pay more and some pay less. Why? Because privately owned rail infrastructure costs a lot of money to maintain. So to keep the trains running, railroads charge lower prices to shippers who would only pay as much as the next available option, while charging higher prices to shippers with fewer competitive options.
It may seem unfair that one customer pays more than another to move its goods on the railroad, but it really just means that the pricing each customer receives reflects the market for that customer's business. Differential pricing allows railroads to provide rail service to every customer at the best possible price that will generate the revenue needed to keep the railroad safe and operational. Let's explore how.
Imagine a rail line with 3 customers: a timber company, a grain facility, and a chemical company. The timber company and the grain facility have railroads, barges, and trucks competing for their business, while the nearby chemical company has access to rail and trucks at this location. Let's say the railroad needs to make at least $6 to cover its cost to build and operate the line. The timber plant and the grain facility will pay no more than $1 before taking their business to the barge or trucking company competing with the railroad for the business. So the railroad charges the chemical company $4 to ship its chemicals, a price the truck company cannot beat, and $1 each for the timber plant and the grain facility to transport their goods. Now imagine the railroad tried to charge the grain, timber, and chemical customers the same rate, $2 for rail service. In theory, this would give the chemical company a $2 rate, but the timber plant and grain facility would take their business elsewhere, and the chemical company would eventually be forced to pay $6 for service or face shutdown of the rail line. This scenario illustrates why railroads use differential pricing to broaden their customer base and distribute costs across that base.
Let's talk for a moment about government intervention in the pricing of goods and services. In economics, a free market system is one with little or no government control, one that's regulated by competition in the free market. When government intervenes, it is government, not the free market, picking winners and losers. Let's see how this plays out.
The railroad needs to make at least $6 to cover the cost to build and operate the line. If the government tells the railroad to lower the chemical company's rate to $3, the railroad must recover $3 from the timber plant and the grain facility. But neither will pay more than $1 before taking their traffic off the railroad. Those numbers don't add up. With one or both of the other customers taking their traffic off the railroad, the line would not cover its costs and ultimately be shut down entirely, resulting in all three customers losing rail service. This scenario illustrates how government intervention in a free market can lead to the unintended consequence of reduced service.
Shippers who pay higher prices don't like differential pricing for obvious reasons. They want their prices to be lower. The shippers claim railroads are taking advantage of the fact that they're only served by one railroad. But those claims are disingenuous for a number of reasons, two of which we'll discuss now.
Competition is pervasive. Many shippers claim they are captive because they are served by only one railroad. But competition comes in many different forms, all of which serve to keep railroad prices reasonable. Modal competition exists when a customer can use another form of transportation to move their goods. A good example of modal competition is using a truck instead of a train to move goods. Product competition exists when a customer can substitute a different product or material for the existing one. For example, an electric utility could substitute natural gas for coal to generate electricity if the price to buy and transport natural gas was lower. Finally, geographic competition exists when a customer can source a product from another location or sell to different markets. In fact, many customers have facilities at multiple locations and multiple sources of product. While not all of these forces are at play for every customer, railroads compete in highly complex markets, and government intervention in just one aspect is unfair and leads to distortions. Shippers have recourse. At the end of the day, there is a limit to what a railroad can charge a customer who is served by only one railroad. And if the price is too high, the shipper can bring a rate case before the Surface Transportation Board, the federal agency that regulates railroad pricing. Shippers can use one of three tests to prove that their price is unreasonable. Since 1996, when the STB was created, rail customers have brought 51 rate cases to the board. Of those, shippers have won 12. Railroads have won 11, and 28 have reached voluntary settlement or been withdrawn.
Despite this, some rail shippers continue to push for legislative and regulatory changes that they can use to lower the price they pay for rail service. They've floated numerous proposals that run counter to the very free market system that defines the U.S. economy. In the end, government intervention into railroad operations and pricing is only beneficial for the few shippers the government deems winners. At the end of the day, railroads invest a lot in their customers and in the infrastructure necessary to serve them. Continuing to make those investments is critically important, and pricing in a way that threatens that relationship is bad for business, everyone's business. We've given you a lot of information to absorb today. If you're interested in learning more about differential pricing or railroad regulation, please visit our website at www.aar.org.